So I thought I'd do a quick video on how to get some fake stone, or some, in this case, fake concrete. What I'm using in this instance is a piece of recycled polystyrene, which is actually out of a cool room wall. The difference with the type of polystyrenes that you'll find is usually to do with the different types of bead size that you have. Generally, the larger the beads, the softer the foam, and the smaller they are, they tend to be more densely packed and the foam tends to be a bit stiffer. I've selected this one purely for the fact that when it's broken apart, it already has a surface that looks like a broken concrete because of the size of those beads. Now, what you want to do is lose the bead aspect of them. You don't want them to look round, you want them to look broken up. Now, where necessary, I do actually cut them into different shapes so that one's a bit more brick-like. Where possible, I prefer to use the broken surface. I tend to find that it has a look that's more realistic and more natural. From there, what you want to do is break up the bead surface. What I use is an oil-based spray paint. Normally you can't spray paint foam for the reason that I'm actually using for this. It melts it. The chemicals in the paint will degrade the surface of the foam, but in this instance that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. So all I need to do is actually give that surface a spray, and the amount that you put on will determine how much it degrades. So I'm giving that an even-ish sort of coating, but not a hell of a lot. And you can see the surface bubbling there. That's basically breaking up the surface of those small beads and making them more concave or more cup-shaped. And that's exactly what we want for that broken concrete sort of surface. Now, I'll put that out in the sun so that it dries fairly quickly and sort of suppresses how much it will actually melt the polystyrene. But once it's done, you'll end up with a piece that looks more like that. Now, that's still nowhere near looking like the rock, but I'll show you how to finish it off. So the biggest thing to remember is the more spray paint you put on, the more it will degrade, and the larger the beading in the polystyrene, the more it will degrade. So if you've got tiny little beads like this one, they degrade to a smaller degree. The larger beads will degrade a lot more. If you're thinking about it like this type of polystyrene beads you'd find inside a bean bag, those individual beads that would sort of evaporate down to nothing. So if you've got a fairly tightly packed surface, it works quite effectively. Now from there, the weathering and finishing of this can basically be in one technique, one move. So here's a finished piece that has a great deal more of a rock-like surface. This is a water-based gap filler. It's basically the cheapest one I can find on the market. For the purpose of what I'm using, it doesn't need to be terribly expensive. The only criteria is that it needs to be water-based. So I've got a light brown or a sandy colour one that I'm using, and then I have a black or a very dark grey. Now, effectively, this just works like a texture paint. So I've got the two different colours there that I'm going to use. I probably will actually add a little bit more to this because I want to lose a little bit of that brown. And add a little bit more grey or the darker colour to it because I'm still going for that burnt scorch. I get this from my local hardware shop, and I find that there would be a number of different colours that you could actually use for an exterior brickwork or an exterior rock, including greens and browns, greys, whites, different sort of things that you can actually mix in. The idea from this is it's basically layering. The first layer is to fill up the polystyrene effect and lose the aspects of the polystyrene. It's a gap filler, but I'm going to use it more like a paint. In that sort of consistency, it's a little bit too muddy. So I'm just going to get a good blob of it on my brush and then dip it in some water. And whilst it's a wet surface, I'm going to apply that to the surface. And then I'll just keep on wetting that with the brush and smearing it in until it actually goes right into all the little holes and nooks within the polystyrene. Being water-based, this dries quite quickly. As I'm doing this, because of the type of stuff that it is, it tends to froth up a little bit, become a little bit bubbly, and those bubbles will die down as it dries. Now I'm just going to start adding a bit of the black in as well. The mixing of the colours like this a lot of the time will give me that all-in-one weathering effect that I'm after. and a lot of the time once this is dried, that will be it. I won't have to go back and add anything else, it'll be finished. The more I want it to get into the little nooks and crannies, it's just a matter of adding more water to it. Now, depending on the surface that you actually want to get, you can leave it like that, and that will leave a relatively smooth surface, which would give you a newer looking surface. Think concrete that's not weathered at all. In this instance, I actually want it to actually look a little bit more weathered, like it's been out in the weather for years. So I'm actually going to wipe off some of that surface. I'll leave that to dry out in the sun. It will dry a little bit darker, so I need to see what it looks like once it's dry, and it might need a little bit more added for colouring, but that's basically it. This same texture paint idea and weathering effect can be used on a number of different surfaces. I've used it on the rebar there to give me a raised and bubbled sort of rust effect, and I've also used it on some of the skulls to actually have extra scorching sort of areas, and it leaves a nice textured surface. And you can mix the two together to get whatever colour you like. In this one I actually added a little bit of stain to give it a bit more of a rust sort of effect, but I have left some of the black, just plain black as well.